Ah, Sony, I had such high hopes for the Xperia 1 Mark II. Yes, get over the name, it's clumsy. This was the Uber phone, the one that had everything, ticked every spec box, the ultimate Android phone for you and I, and which promised the definitive camera phone experience to boot. And to be fair, the 1 Mark II does get an awful lot right, from the slim form factor with 21:9 screen to the triple 12 megapixel camera mix to the loud and balanced stereo speakers, of which more later, from the use of almost stock Android to the inclusion of a bona fide 3.5mm audio jack and Qi charging. There is so much to like here. 2 days into my review period, I was already checking my piggy bank to work out if I wanted to buy this for myself. The ultimate Android phone? Quite possibly. However, inexplicably, Sony has managed to shoot itself in the foot in a number of ways. Obviously, the price has to be one of them. It's quoting £1,100 in the UK, though I've seen it on deals for 800 or so. So think of 800 as the actual price in your head. And at £800, the Xperia 1 Mark II actually makes a lot more sense. The elephant in the room, though, is the display tech used. Sony has gone for a 10-bit 4K OLED display, working out at 640 pixels per inch, way beyond the resolution human eyes can see. Now, in fairness, there's the whole RGB pentile nature of AMOLED to take into account. So the 4K thing might just about be valid after all, and I'd be celebrating it, except for the fact that the smaller the display pixels, the less light each can emit, obviously. And it's not quite a linear curve, however you might do the maths. So the Xperia 1 Mark II's display is dimmer than I'd like. I found myself constantly diving into the drop down to turn the brightness up, and when shooting photos in sunlight, found myself squinting to read elements in the camera UI, which isn't good for a phone for which imaging is core. Sony, I'd bet you that a QHD display, i.e. 1440p, would have been easily good enough and twice as bright, just as on the Samsung and Huawei flagships, for example, all of which are excellent outdoors. Thirdly, and thankfully finally, since most of the rest is good, don't worry, the telephoto lens here is quoted as 3 times 12 megapixels, but the sensor used is actually 20 megapixels, and Sony does some crude downsampling to get this to match the resolution of the other lenses. Quite why it does this is a bit of a mystery, since the telephoto results are wishy-washy. That's a technical term, by the way. They're lacking in clarity and contrast. Clearly some software pixie dust would have helped here, and maybe Sony can add this in a future update. Go decompile Google's Gcam software and copy what it does, eh? Now, all of this was enough for me personally to put my piggy bank away, but I don't want to discourage all viewers from doing the same. There's a lot else to like and to play with. The Xperia 1 Mark II is a Snapdragon 865, 8GB of RAM, 4000 mAh battery and 256 GB of storage as standard, and microSD. It's clearly a modern powerhouse and was generally a pleasure to navigate. Sony's additions to stock Android are small, and my only objection was the giant Call of Duty game not only being pre-installed and uninstallable, but also with a 2GB update waiting for new Xperia owners to have to download on day one as part of the initial Play Store app updates. That's just nasty, Sony. You should have put this in as a stub app for people to download if they wanted it. The front-facing stereo speakers are, as I say, excellent. Here's a demo, full volume. It's the cinematic rock experience. I was there for hours when I was playing with this earlier. There's Dolby Atmos if you need it, but you won't need it most of the time. Just toggle it on for streaming content, which is Atmos encoded. This is the first time, by the way, I've used Sony's new dynamic vibration system. Essentially, it triggers off the bass frequencies in any media to oscillate the excellent haptic feedback system so that your hands holding the phone feel the bass, in fact, more than hearing it. You can set this to 3 different levels depending on preference and the style of music or media. It takes some getting used to, but I'm all for it on balance. Crank everything up, put on some classic rock as I did just now, hold the phone in both hands and you're there. The 3.5mm audio jack is great to see and hear. The output seems to be the DAC in the Snapdragon chip though. There's no dedicated power amp. It's fine though, loud enough to drive most consumer headphones. There's a DSEE upscaling system which sounds fancy and claims to improve audio quality, but which I found not to make any difference whatsoever, at least on my 320 kilobits per second source test music tracks. Maybe it works on more average material. But on with imaging. The Xperia 1 Mark II's claim to fame, aside from the slightly flawed telephoto covered earlier, it's mainly a voyage of discovery and delight. The optics have enough natural bokeh to make for super arty close-up shots. The image processing is restrained enough that you don't have to worry about over-enthusiastic edge enhancement as on recent Samsung flagships. So you can work with JPEG much quicker and easier, though I gather that capturing RAW is coming in an update. Sony is clearly still frantically programming stuff for this device behind the scenes. Focusing is lightning fast, and objects, people or pets can be tracked fast enough to shoot focused burst sequences over 20 shots a second. So think sports events, pets or kids mid-air, action shots. Generally, it's all very impressive. One quirk is that you can't switch lenses by simply zooming in or out as on other phones. Again, it's possible that Sony might add this in an update, but at the moment you have to stop and consciously change lenses. Video demo here on the Xperia 1 Mark II. Walking stabilisation and software seems excellent. Gyro based, certainly very stable on the viewfinder. Quite windy, stereo sound, let's see how it copes. Notably, the viewfinder is duller than on most other camera flagships. Also, you can't zoom to go to the telephoto lens. You can just do software in frame, in sensor zooming. If you want to zoom, you've got to change the lens to the zoom here and then carry on, which is all a bit disruptive. On most other camera flagships, you can basically switch lenses, zoom in and zoom out however you want. Here you've got to keep stopping, changing lenses and then carrying on. And let's go to wide angle as well. And there, wide angle, stopping and starting, stopping and starting. Very, very interesting way of doing it, but maybe not a restriction for how you use video. Now, I realise that the switch between lenses on all phones other than the iPhone 11 series produces a visible change in white balance and characteristics, and this might offend Sony purists. But to force users to stop filming and restart each time is way, way more offensive. Plus, as you heard, there's lag involved and you lose a few seconds from the start and end of clips, at least with current software. Coming with the Xperia 1 Mark II are a couple of extra imaging applications, Photo Pro and Cinema Pro. These don't deliver extra quality per se, but they do give extra manual options for both photos and video, letting you achieve specific effects, limited mainly by, as they say, your own imagination. The interfaces for these two applications are modelled on Sony's DSLRs and designed to help an existing alpha camera user feel at home. Though A, I hated them since they were alien to me. I really tried, I just hated them. And B, surely a Sony Alpha camera owner would just use their main unit rather than the phone. After all, if you've got a few minutes to fiddle around and set up all these pro settings in the pro apps, my guess is you've probably brought your Alpha camera along as well. You don't have to use the pro camera applications though. There's almost as much in the main consumer camera applications, so I guess it's nice to have options. Both take advantage of the physical shutter button to launch and take photos, but for actually taking a shot, I'm firmly of the opinion that an on-screen shutter control introduces less lateral camera shake, so that's what I do. The hardware is rounded off by a capacitive fingerprint sensor here on the right-hand side power button, and it's excellent. Instant recognition, you don't even have to press. A simple contact authenticates you and powers on the display. Very well done. There's an always-on display here, but it's turned off by default and for good reason. On my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, for example, always-on display consumes a couple of extra % battery per day, presumably because there's support built into the display electronics. On the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, it's implemented purely in software, and as a result, having the always-on display always-on drains a quarter of your battery each day. I'll repeat that, 25% battery per day. So there are some sensible, smart and raise to wake options implemented instead, and they're okay. In short, this is currently a flawed imaging flagship that could improve significantly with software updates, more so than for your average phone release. It reminded me a little of the ambitions of the Nokia 9 PureView, except that Sony will have a heck of a lot more commitment to following through on its ambitions. I'm looking forward to seeing how far this will have got in, say, 3 months' time, when hopefully the official price will be realistic too.